Let's talk about Amaya Papaya. In her Call Her Daddy interview, Amaya opens up about her Love Island experience, and while her reflections are powerful, I believe that the lesson that she walked away with doesn't reflect who she truly is. I did a video explaining why I believe that Amaya was the most misunderstood person on Love Island, and today I'm going to be reacting to her as we hear her in her own words describe how she felt during her time on Love Island. Amaya shared how she felt during the mailbox challenge and why she thinks no one stood up for her. And I'm going to share what I believe kept everyone silent in that moment. Hi, I'm Dr. Pam, therapist and relationship counselor, and I care so deeply about helping you grow and build more meaningful, connected relationships, as well as your own personal growth. And if you want more of that, I'd love for you to subscribe so we can stay connected and keep growing together. And if you are here regularly, please know it means so much to me. I read your comments as much as I can, and I am always so touched. And I have deeply valued the growth that you have experienced from my videos. That is exactly why I make them. Okay, let's just dive right in. So Alex asks Amaya how she is feeling after having won Love Island. And this is her response, which does not surprise me at all.
I'm feeling so overwhelmed with gratitude. It's nothing but positive feelings, but I really do feel seen and validated.
Okay, first, what I really want to share with you about Amaya is something that might help you better understand someone in your life or maybe even yourself. I believe Amaya was born with a sensitive temperament, something that I talked about in my previous video, and about 15 to 20% of people are born with a sensitive temperament. And notice that I'm emphasizing born because it is not a choice. I go into more detail about this in the other video that I made about Amaya if you want to check that out. People born with this temperament experience emotions more intensely than others, often feeling many emotions at the same time, which can overwhelm their nervous system. And this isn't about being too emotional or too dramatic. You don't choose to have a sensitive temperament, like I said. You are born with it. But the challenge is learning how to understand yourself and manage those strong emotions. So when you see Amaya's tears, they are not weakness. They are a glimpse into how she deeply feels because of her sensitive temperament. So when she says that she feels validated and seen, of course that's important for all of us. But for someone with a sensitive temperament, it carries even deeper meaning. Here's why. Growing up with a sensitive temperament often means being misunderstood, told that you're too sensitive, dramatic, or overly emotional, or sometimes, like Amaya was told, she's too much. Those kind of responses to you are deeply invalidating, especially when sensitivity isn't a choice. It's something, you know what I'm going to say, that you were born with. And over time, this can leave you feeling unseen for who you truly are as a person. Amaya's sense of feeling seen and validated came after many moments on Love Island when she felt the opposite. She may not have felt unseen and invalidated all the time, but there were many moments when she did. Alex goes on to tell Amaya that she became a fan favorite early on and that people loved her. And then she asked her if she had the same experience in the villa.
I felt so misunderstood. And I'm like, wait, is there something wrong with me? Like, what am I doing wrong?
Questioning yourself and wondering if something is wrong with you is very common for people with a sensitive temperament. When your emotional reactions are more intense than those around you and others respond negatively or make you feel like your feelings are too much, it can chip away at your self-trust. And over time, you may start to see your natural emotional responses as flaws instead of traits you were born with, and also questioning, is something wrong with me? Why am I so different from everyone else? And this is why self-awareness is so important for someone with a sensitive temperament. Well, it's important for everyone, but it allows you to better understand your emotions, manage them more effectively, and become an advocate for who you are as a person. And advocacy for yourself is not about pushing back or being against other people. It's about helping people better understand your experiences so they can respond to you with more understanding, empathy, and respect. So next, Alex asks Amaya about sensitive gangsta. Let's see what she says.
Sensitive gangster is just someone who's very in touch with their feelings and isn't afraid to emote, to just show it. And gangster is just like, okay, these tears, don't let them fool you, baby. I'll cry while still holding my own toes down. Like, I'm still very grounded, but I'll probably just be crying in the process of standing up for myself.
I love the way Amaya describes herself. I do think, though, like all of us, she still has some growth work to do, but I also sense that she's a growth-oriented person, which means she will grow. So one important step for her would be recognizing and fully understanding that she has a sensitive temperament. She would really benefit from exploring why she feels what she feels. That's where the real depth of insight and self-awareness becomes transformative, not just for her, but this is true for anyone, any of you out there. It's not about hiding what she feels, but letting herself fully feel it while staying steady and grounded and confident. And she can show that vulnerability and strength can exist at the same time. Next, Amaya talks about being a nurse.
With my patients, I'm such a bit like, girl, if my patients are crying, I'll probably shed a tear and just be there for them, because you have to keep in mind that I'm with people on their worst day, like when they're feeling sick. So I want to be the person, the sunshine of their rainy day.
So when I used to teach college courses, a lot of my human development students were nursing majors. And this is a class that covers a lot. But whenever I had a room full of future nurses, I'd always tell them this one thing. If you take anything away from this course, please remember to prioritize self-care. Nursing is such a giving profession. You're constantly giving so much to people. And when you do that, your own fuel tank eventually runs low. And just like a car can't run on an empty tank, neither can you. If you don't refill your tank, what happens? Well, you end up feeling resentful, burned out, irritable, and too exhausted to keep doing the work that you love to do. And by the way, this is true for anyone in the caretaking profession. This is true for moms, dads. I work with men who have to help them understand the concept of self-care, because when they get depleted, it is a terrible place to be in. And the only way to fill that tank back up is with self-care, giving to yourself the same way that you give to others. And for someone like Amaya, as a highly sensitive person, this matters even more, because HSPs thrive on giving. They feel things so deeply and they want to be there for everyone. But what they often don't see is how essential it is to also give back to themselves. Without that, the very sensitivity that makes them so empathetic can leave them feeling drained. But with self-care, that same sensitivity becomes a strength and allows them to connect more deeply without losing themselves in the process. So next, Amaya talks about her experience with ACE and the babe moment.
Everybody has their own boundaries. However, it was just like, that's really part of my lingo. And I know he did ask the question of like, do you usually call your partner's babe or something like that? And I just gradually said yes. I was like, yeah, but like, I guess he thought I was being disrespectful when I'm not going to change who I am or change the way I speak.
One of the things that I love most about being a therapist is gaining a deeper understanding of people. It's so easy to judge someone based on a single moment we witness. But when we know more of their story, our understanding around them changes. And I keep this in mind, especially when I'm working with couples. I might see what looks like an unfair argument, but I know I am only witnessing a moment while they are living in their full story in that moment. So with that in mind, when Amaya called Ace babe, It clearly stirred something in Ace. He mentioned on the show that he doesn't trust easily, and while we don't know the reasons behind that, it's likely connected to past hurt. And if we knew more of his full story and his reaction to being called babe, it would probably make more sense. For Amaya, Bryan shared that he understands that in her culture, babe is simply normal lingo. Still, I wonder if, because Amaya is such a deeply feeling person, she simply connects more quickly because of how deeply she experiences emotions. And many people with a sensitive temperament value deep connection. And for someone like Ace who has trust challenges, that intensity can feel overwhelming or even frightening. In the end, as Amaya said herself, and I didn't show this, they simply were not compatible. Next, Amaya talks about how she felt coming in as a bombshell and the impact that had on her initial experience on Love Island.
I remembered like the first couple of nights where I was sleeping, I like cried myself to sleep. And then somebody in the bedroom was like, is someone crying? And I'm like, no, it's just my allergy. Waking up with my face all puffy. Cause I'm just sensitive, like honestly, like, and obviously like after a while it didn't feel like that like anymore, but especially with the argument between Ace and I and how I was probably portrayed.
In my video about Amaya, I suggested that she was likely misunderstood as soon as she entered the villa, and she confirms that this is how she felt. She shared that she was so nervous coming in as a bombshell and then immediately had the difficult experience with Ace. That's a lot for anyone to process, and trying to carry it alone makes it even harder. Feeling misunderstood right from the start can shape your whole experience. And for someone like Amaya who feels deeply and values connection, not being able to share her experience and the vulnerability that she felt probably made that isolation feel even stronger. It's why she cried herself to sleep. And when you don't feel safe to process big emotions, they get heavier, and you can start believing that the misunderstanding says something about you. That's why she felt so unseen and why validation later on meant so much to her. So next, she talks about her relationship with Huda.
Girl, she is the funniest girl I have ever met. Like the nicest girl, very motherly. And I know we did start off in a rocky place. Eventually with time, it just was clear that we were really misunderstood, me and her, which made us bond to each other even more. We just felt like nobody really understood how deep we are with our feelings, so we just bonded off of that.
I've done a few videos about Huda, and the one that really stands out to me is her interview on Call Her Daddy. If you watch that interview or my video, you know that Huda is carrying a lot of trauma. She has a lot of growth work ahead of her if she chooses to take that path, and I really hope that she does, because everyone deserves the chance to heal. Something interesting here is that Amaya sees herself as similar to Huda because they both have what she says how steep they are in their feelings. And maybe Huda does have a sensitive temperament. I can't know for sure, but there's an important difference. Amaya's sensitivity comes from being an HSP, while Huda's big emotional reactions come from being emotionally fragile because of her trauma. And those two things are not the same. And if she has a sensitive temperament, then she is really overwhelmed with emotions. Between the fragility from her trauma and sensitive temperament, that is a lot to carry. And when you're an HSP, you go through life feeling misunderstood. And so when you see someone else who's expressive or emotional, it is easy to assume they are just like you. But if that person is fragile or emotionally immature, you will likely end up being surprised and even disappointed when they don't respond the way you would as a sensitive temperament. My hope for Amaya and Huda's friendship is that maybe Huda can navigate her trauma a little better in friendships than she does in her romantic relationships. So next, Amaya describes her relationship with Austin.
Austin had a slight conversation of him wanting to take things slow and in a slower pace. And baby, we were already moving slow. We wouldn't kiss outside of the challenges. We weren't really cuddling with each other. Every conversation we had was very just meaningful. So I'm like, moving slow. Babe, we're already in turtle speed. Like, I was just confused.
A few things stand out here. Austin wanted to slow things down while Amaya felt that they were already moving at what she called turtle speed. This shows one of the most important challenging parts of relationships. Two people can have very different perspectives on the same dynamic. Those perspectives are shaped by so many factors: upbringing, personality wiring, past relationship experiences, and in Maya's case, her highly sensitive temperament, which makes her naturally crave deeper connection. And when these differences are not understood, it can feel like one person is pulling while the other person is resisting, when in reality, both are simply moving at the pace that feels natural to them. That's why working toward mutual understanding is so important in relationships. Not to erase the differences, but to learn how to bridge them. That being said, Amaya seemed to be better matched with Bryan than she was with Austin. And that isn't anything against Austin or a criticism of him. It's simply a reminder that compatibility often comes down to finding someone whose pace, needs, and way of connecting align more naturally with your own. When that happens, the relationship feels less like a struggle to negotiate differences and more like a rhythm that you both can settle into. So next, Alex asked Amaya what she was expecting to see on her end from the mailbox experience.
I was hoping that people would just be honest with me prior to that, because there was a lot of things I found out that night about how people felt that never once said it to my face. So with me, I'm not like that. I usually just say things to people how I feel. I don't wait for a challenge to do so.
Many HSPs live in a space of authenticity. Not all, of course, but for those who do, it can feel surprising, even disorienting when others don't. From what we saw on Love Island, Amaya seems to lean into that authenticity. She's very direct with people, and for her, being straightforward is part of how she connects. And for many HSPs, honesty and transparency are how they build trust. So it can feel confusing when someone communicates in a different style or at a different depth. Do you remember this?
So, Shadi, I definitely do want to talk to you. So, like, what's going on between you and Ace? Because yesterday, you were one of the girls that I did cry and vent to about him.
No, of course.
And I feel like you had many opportunities to tell me, like, hey, girl, I still feel a connection with him, and I still want to pursue that. Yeah. And now the way I view it is like, wait, was she being genuine with me?
Amaya went directly to Shelly to ask if she was being genuine with her. That shows how much Amaya values expressing her feelings and hearing honesty in return. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she always does it in the best possible way. For someone with a sensitive temperament, emotions can come on so strong that they're hard to contain. And when that happens, it can also be difficult for the person on the receiving end to know how to respond. We might value honesty and emotional expression, but if those emotions come across too intensely, and they often can from a sensitive temperament, they can overwhelm the very person we're trying to connect with. That's why self-awareness and timing matters just as much as authenticity. When we can express our feelings clearly and in a way that others can take them in, connection has a much better chance of deepening instead of shutting down. So next, Alex shares that when Ace, Austin, and Zach ganged up on Amaya, it was very uncomfortable and upsetting to watch. And this is what Amaya had to say about it.
Oh my God. And plus, people were already not necessarily complaining, but just say I cry too much. So it's like, damn, how can I not cry right now? It was a really, really tough moment for me, to be honest with you. Like, to just be on that podium and having nobody but myself at that moment. I was blacking out. Like,
when Amaya says that she was blacking out, What she is really describing is dissociation. Her mind was disconnecting from the moment because it was too overwhelming to process. That tells us that the experience was traumatic for her, and it was clear to everyone watching how intense that moment was. It would have felt traumatic for anyone in her position. Dissociation is just your body's way of protecting you. It steps in when your nervous system is overloaded. So Alex asked her if she ever experienced anything like that before.
To be honest, no. Because like once again, like I'm able to walk away and like block someone when I feel like there's a conversation is just leading to something horrible.
Right.
But at that moment, I really just needed to embrace it and just stand on business.
So now Amaya is describing the experience of feeling trapped, not only from being unexpectedly ganged up on in the villa in front of everyone, but also under the pressure of cameras. In that moment, she was dissociating, trying to stand up for herself, and at the same time likely feeling some shame for crying, since she had already been criticized and shamed for her tears in other situations. What's important to see here is how many layers were happening for her all at once. She wasn't just navigating conflict. She was battling her nervous system shutting down, the spotlight of public scrutiny, and the internalized fear of being judged for her sensitivity. For someone with a sensitive temperament, or even anyone, that combination can feel overwhelming, even unbearable. Her tears in that moment were communicating the invisible weight that she was carrying. And then Zach added more salt in the wound.
And on top of that, I had no idea Zach felt that way. And that was the person I was currently in the couple with. So out of everybody, I was like, okay, I need to have somebody to stand up for me. But it was not him at all.
Imagine being in a relationship with someone and having no idea they felt negatively toward you, and then they choose to tell you in front of everyone. At the very moment, you are already being ganged up on. And in that situation, I think she stood her ground rather well. She told him to stop, and that took strength, especially when her nervous system was already under so much pressure. What's important here is that she didn't collapse under the weight of all of it. Even while feeling overwhelmed, she was still able to create a boundary in the moment when she told Zach to stop talking. That was powerful. Strength isn't about not crying and not feeling. It's about finding your voice and holding on to yourself, even when you're vulnerable. Next, Amaya shares her perspective on being too much too soon by all three guys who ganged up on her.
My father loves to say that a strong, confident woman, especially a woman who's in touch with her emotions, would intimidate the cowards and people who are not vulnerable and open like that. I never understood the coming off too strong part because I never groped anybody. We never spoke about marriage or kids talk.
The best thing an HSP can do is learn to be an advocate for themselves. Now, that's important for all of us, of course. But for an HSP, it's especially powerful to read, learn, and really understand this part of yourself. Because when you know yourself better, you won't feel as confused about why people sometimes respond to you the way that they do. And you'll be able to share more clearly who you are. I don't think Amaya realizes that she likely is an HSP. But if she did, she might say something like, I was born as an HSP. Just like some people are born introverts and others extroverts. And for me, being an HSP means I often have big emotional reactions to situations. So of course she could go on to say so much more, but that would be a really good place to start. When I work with HSPs, many of them already know that they're sensitive, but they don't always see how much it shows up in their day-to-day lives or how much it impacts the people that they love. Let me just be clear, being an HSP is only one part of who Amaya is. There's so much more to her, and that's true for all of us. So not everything has to do with her sensitivity. She has so many layers, as we all do. We are so complex as human beings. That's why self-awareness is such a gift. The more you understand yourself, the more confident you become in your relationships and in your life. And for HSPs, that self-awareness can turn to what once felt like a burden into one of their greatest strengths. So next, Alex points out that no one stood up for her when she was ganged up on. And Alex asks her why she thinks no one stood up for her.
Honestly, I don't know if it was just more of them letting the conversation just be done and be finished.
Okay, so why didn't anyone stand up for her except Bryan, of course? Obviously, I don't know for sure, but these are my thoughts. Just to explain, not to excuse. I do wonder how many of the Islanders were triggered themselves in that moment. When you see that level of intensity directed at one person, it can stir up memories of your own past experiences, times when you may have been attacked or felt powerless, and that can shut people down. Also, shock, fear, and power dynamics probably played a role too. Sometimes friends freeze, unable to process what's happening quickly enough to respond. Others may worry that if they step in, that aggression will turn on them. And with that louder, more dominant presence of the men in that moment, some may have simply felt intimidated and unsure of what to do. But there's something else worth noting. Silence can also reflect the unspoken rules in a group. When 3 men gang up verbally on one woman and none of the women step in, it shows how quickly people can abandon their own values for a sense of safety or sometimes belonging. Sadly, this isn't just about Love Island. It mirrors how bystanders often stay quiet in real life when power, gender, and group pressure collide. Silence doesn't always mean that people agree. It just means that they are scared. And keep in mind, fear causes us to freeze. And I can't help but wonder how many of the Islanders now feel some sense of remorse for not standing up for Amaya. But what's likely true is that most of them don't even fully understand what happened inside themselves at that moment. And this is something we can all relate to. Every one of us has had moments where we reacted or didn't react in ways that surprised us without any real insight into understanding why. It's important to understand that our nervous systems sometimes take over before we are aware and can sometimes make decisions for us before our minds have even caught up. So next, Amaya talks about her response to that painful experience. And on the surface, it might sound like strength, but in reality, it works against her true nature, and I'll share why.
It was pretty tough, but I'm telling you, like, out of this whole experience, my skin is so thicker now, thicker than raw beef, okay? Like, or it's burnt beef. Like, this skin is tough now, baby.
Sometimes HSPs, or anyone who has been hurt, believe the only way to cope with intense hurt is to grow a thicker skin, shut down their emotions, or deny them altogether. But that's not who Amaya is. She calls herself a sensitive gangsta, and her ability to feel deeply is her gift. However, sadly, it also means that she hurts deeply. Her real growth work isn't about hardening herself. It's about learning how to understand her feelings and how to comfort herself when she's hurting. If she truly tried to grow a thicker skin, she wouldn't be the person that she is now. Now, I don't know exactly what Amaya means when she says that she grew a thicker skin, and maybe it's just the words that she chose in the moment. But what I do know is this: for HSPs, sensitivity is both a gift and a challenge. And the growth work is learning how to hold both at the same time. Amaya already uses her sensitivity in a beautiful way as a nurse. Her patients don't want someone with a thick skin. They want someone who can feel and care with them. What she needs most is to give herself that same compassion, love, and care that she gives so freely to others. That's how you learn to navigate the challenges of feeling deeply without losing the gift that sensitivity truly is. So next, Alex asked Amaya how she viewed Bryan differently after he stood up for her.
But just hearing his voice, because I thought it was just like arguments and people just attacking me. And to the point where one moment I put my head down and wasn't looking up. And then I heard him say, wait, hold on. And I looked up and I was like, my eyes just glowed. And I really did feel like he was my knight in armor that night, like just saving me.
I'm really glad that Bryan stood up for her in that moment. She deserved that, especially because she so freely stands up for others. Amaya describes him as her knight in shining armor. But here's the thing. She was already doing a good job standing her own ground. Bryan didn't rescue her. He joined her. He connected with her in that moment, and that connection is what drew her to him. Real support isn't rescuing someone, it is standing with them. So next, Amaya addresses mental health on Love Island.
I think sometimes like people forget how intense things could be in there. Like when you don't have any interaction with the outside world, you're not able to call your mom and dad and talk to them. So whenever we feel like the world is like crashing down due to the intensity of emotions, we're able to talk to the doctors, and everybody has their own way with navigating how they deal with their feelings. For me, just going on a dock and feeling that fresh air and like just embracing Mother Nature.
I'm relieved to know that the Islanders have access to mental health support on Love Island because Amaya said it perfectly. They are isolated from the outside world. They don't have access to their loved ones. And whatever their reason is for being on Love Island, they are still likely impacted in ways that they never saw coming. What also stands out to me is that Amaya not only turned to the mental health professionals to talk things through, but she also turned to nature for her healing. And nature can be one of the best healers, not just for HSPs, but for anyone. The rhythm of nature helps to regulate our nervous systems in ways we don't always realize. It can be grounding, create calm and perspective when life feels overwhelming. The combination of mental health support and the healing power of nature shows us something important. Growth and resilience don't come from shutting down our emotions, but from finding healthy ways to process and soothe them. And that's true for all of us, not just on Love Island, but in our everyday life. And if you would like to understand more about Amaya and sensitive temperament, be sure to check out this video. Well, that is a wrap on this episode. Make sure to come back because I'm going to be reacting to the Love Island reunion. I can't wait to watch it and react to it, so stay tuned. So many of you have shared with me that you have found these videos helpful and beneficial in understanding yourselves and others, and that is exactly why I create them. And if they have brought you any clarity or direction, subscribing is the best way to stay connected with me so we can keep growing together. And if you found this video helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit. See you next time.